This is Rob Stone from Fox Sports.
Hey guys, this is Cole Liker.
Hi, I'm Neil Collins.
You are listening to the Unused Substitute.
The Unused Substitute.
And you're listening to the Unused Substitutes.
Get off the bench!
Hey there, Little Red Riding Hood, I got a problem and it's complicated. Going through text and I just can't ignore the signs. There and now it's so loud it hurts. Hear me, fella, hear me, how when the full moon
On the throw, ball gonna bounce down, it's free in the box. Bicycle kick! Goal! Rowdies! What a play! What a shot! And it's 1-0 Rowdies!
Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday night. You're listening to the Unused Substitutes live on Radio St. Pete, part of the Beautiful Game Network, sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. We got some kind of weird noise going on over there. And our executive producer tonight is a man I like to call the Emperor, Mr. Mike Pendleton, sitting on the other side of the phone line from me, the internet line, who hopefully I assume is the person making these weird sounds. Is that you, Steven?
Is it?
It's not me, as far as I know.
I don't know. I'm not making noises. I'm just clicking on keyboards, and so I'm wondering if maybe that's what's doing it.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would. That's what it sounded like the noise was. I don't know if it was coming through or not, but I was hearing it in my ears.
Funny stuff. Yes, we're here. We're here after a crazy weekend of road traveling rowdies going crazy, and a fun video that came out this morning of Eggsalicious. It's fantastic.
You're actually going to have to fill me in on that one because I did not get home in time to see that before getting in here. Yeah, there's a ton that went on over the weekend. There's a huge game going on right now that has pretty significant implications for the Rowdies. So let's hop into it. Louisville 2, Rowdies 2. I predicted a draw last week. I think I even predicted a 2-2 draw. I think I predicted Lucky scoring a goal. But despite that, this still feels like a bizarre game that I have no idea what really happened. Steven, you had a chance to sit down and watch it again. You stared once more into the mouth of madness that was the Rowdies' last trip to Slugger Field, as far as we know. What happened on Saturday?
Well, what's funny about it is that, especially in the first half, we pretty well ran the course of play in that first half. I mean, that was fantastic. We were controlling possession for very, very long spells, and we had absolutely the better of the scoring chances in that first half. At least I thought. And that was the interesting part about what happened is that, again, you've got another situation where set piece defending, especially when it comes to free kicks, people just aren't tracking their runners. Andrew Tunari got bit on that several weeks ago. And because this team doesn't give up a lot of goals, it's kind of noteworthy that here it is, several games later, and it's very, very similar circumstances where a player is going far post and just a little stutter step and suddenly somebody doesn't track their man. And that's really frustrating because especially when you're, absolutely dominating a game, which by all means, it kind of felt like we were dominating that game at start. That's a really frustrating way to go down by one. Now, the other first half highlight is going to be a subject of debate for a lot of people, and that's going to be the play where McCarthy got challenged by that slide tackle when he was, kicking a ball upfield. So let's – obviously, if you're listening to the show, you probably watched the game, or at least you've seen that highlight or low light, if you want to refer to it that way. And so let's take a step back from this. Let's look at this and approach this from the referee's shoes. And this is why I have such a problem with this call, or in this case, no call. The first question that you have to ask yourself when you see this play and you see this play develop, and here's another thing, is like, where the heck is the linesman in this decision too? Because he should absolutely have been aware of what was going on. They all have headpieces. They can all talk to each other. You've got a situation where the first question you have to ask yourself is, first of all, is there contact? Because that's going to determine the severity as to how you approach the situation. Again, you don't have to actually contact somebody to cause a foul. That's a bit of a misnomer in soccer. A lot of people think it has to be contact. You actually don't have to contact. Like, if I swing to punch somebody and I miss, that doesn't make it any less of a red card. Like, if I'm legitimately trying to punch somebody in the face on the field. So the first question is to determine severity to a certain degree or intent. Is there contact made? Now, McCarthy falls over during the play. So you've got a problem. If you don't think there's contact on that play, then McCarthy deserves a yellow card for trying to embellish and get the yellow drawn against the Louisville player. That should be a yellow card against McCarthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that
there's something to be at least whistled there, and there's nothing that actually
happens. That's to me is the most bizarre part of the no call at all, is that play had to have had a whistle blown. Absolutely, positively, undeniably should have had a whistle blown dead on that play. The no call, the no call is just flabbergasting to me. So that's the first step in this, right? So the second step is, well, what if he actually did make contact, or what if in the course of that slide tackle he had a foot raised or whatever? When you start looking at severity and intent, as far as, whether you go from endangering an opponent to reckless and all those, the specific definitions as far as how you grade the difference between a yellow and a red card. Where did he make contact as far as like in position of the field? What part of the body was hit? Was he going after a plant foot, or was it something on a follow through? Was the guy that's doing the slide tackle, was his foot way in the air, or was it low? Was he showing studs up, or was it not showing studs up? These are all little factors. And the unfortunate part about that is the camera work this weekend was, oh my God, it was one of the worst produced games, I thought. So, and I think that's the unfortunate thing here, is that because we didn't have a well-produced game, visually wise, I really can't say whether I think it's a yellow or a red card, because that's going to be opinion-based anyways. Any given day of the week, any referee you talk to, assuming that you're willing to pull out a card for something like that, tempo of the game, the tone of the game does dictate that decision from time to time. Something I'm not necessarily a fan of, but that happens. That's the way referees ref and the way they approach their craft. I think it's a yellow. I think that's a yellow card play. I think it's a foul. I think it's a yellow.
Wait, now is it the yellow on Louisville or
on the Louisville player?
Okay.
On the Louisville player. I don't think it was a dive. I do think contact was made based on what we saw, but the camera cuts away so quickly and wasn't steady enough to really kind of get the fine details before it brisks you way out of focus or out of the other side of the field. And that's the really unfortunate part about that whole setup and what happened there. I think it's a yellow card against Louisville. I don't know if there was enough there to make it a red, but again, we don't have the visual. To me, though, the fact is that the referee didn't blow the whistle dead at all for either reason. And to me, that is as egregious of an error as it gets when you're coming to a referee. Like, I can guarantee you that ref is getting an earful from his assessor for that moment, because that is just awful refereeing. Like I said, either way, if you're looking at this from Louisville's point of view or from the Rowdies' point of view, that whole play was refereed wrong.
Right.
So that's first half. That's first half highlights. And unfortunate, we were a little unfortunate at times to score. And we let in a really stupid set piece goal. And it's interesting because that does set up a fascinating conundrum for the Rowdies of the fact, going into that game, of course, that we have never beaten a team when going into halftime losing. We've come back and got some draws.
Right.
Obviously, this week turned out to be one of those. We've never actually beaten the team that we were losing at halftime. So it set up an interesting gut check for the Rowdies going into the second half.
Let me
go
interrupt
ahead
for 1 second. Going back to the no call, which I'm with you. I think without being able to see a perfect shot of it or being in the position that maybe an official should have been in, it's hard to say if it's red or not, but it's definitely a card. And so without seeing everything, I'm gonna err on the side of caution and say maybe a yellow. Now, unless I'm wrong, the league has the ability to go back and review these instances to see if it's possible dangerous play. Now, is it up to, because it's in the back of my head somewhere that the team the team that feels hard done by maybe has to submit the call? Is it, or can the league opt to review stuff? Can they VAR it basically on their own?
If I'm unless I'm mistaken, and I'd be more than willing to admit if I'm wrong, I believe the league reviews a lot of these instances on their own. I don't know. I don't think the individual clubs point to anything in particular.
Because I've heard about them doing that in the past.
Well, I'm sure there is. I mean, I'm sure a team can protest a decision in general. Like, I'm sure that's the case. As far as how each game is reviewed, I don't know if the clubs always have to point out errors for the review board. That's the difference.
Right. Because this week's discipline report is out, and there's no mention of anything for the Louisville player in there. So, well,
and let's address that for a second, because the other thing that's important about the disciplinary report and what you're allowed to review and not review, and what kind of decisions are made. Again, unless I'm mistaken, but based on memory, I believe the only things that they do are change decisions involving suspensions of players, like ejections,
right?
Or downgrading suspensions. Like it's always basically red card related, whether you're decreasing a red card term from a game sitting out to 0 because it was issued in error, or you're giving a player a suspension for a game or multiple, even though he didn't get a red card. Or maybe he had a yellow card during the game and then they decide later that it should have been a red card. The problem with what happened this weekend with McCarthy, and I think this is kind of one of those kind of gaps in the whole review process. If you look at that play and you say that it's supposed to be a yellow card, then there's nothing. I don't think there's anything anybody can do. Because I don't believe that in the post-game review process, or in that disciplinary grouping ruling, as far as that's concerned, I don't believe you can issue yellow cards after the fact. It's only in relation to ejections in the length of suspensions. I believe.
I'm kind of wondering if it's just they hesitate to do anything when there wasn't even a whistle blown in the first place, even if there should have been. I had a voice in my head about something that happened this year. I went back and looked it up. Back in May, there was a game where Pop Diakite was shown a yellow card in stoppage against Swope Park, and after further review, it was changed to a red card.
Mm-hmm.
So they can upgrade a card.
Yeah, I don't think you can issue yellow cards, quote unquote, after the fact. Because I think that's the difference here. I think if you could, I think they would have, as far as that play in particular. But because they don't do that, I don't think you're not. That's why it wasn't surprising to me when I didn't see anything on the disciplinary report, because if they don't deem it as a red cardable offense that's worthy of a game suspension, then it's not going to show up there anyways, because if it's just a yellow card, it won't be there. If that's what they walked away from that moment as.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I kind of agree with the decision that it should have only been a yellow card. And so the way the chips have kind of fallen kind of makes sense to a certain point. But
All right, so
that was my first half.
all right, going on back to this now the second half.
So second half, obviously, was a lot more Louisville, especially early. Now, we made a sub at half, trading out Tejada for Lucky. I get the move, especially because Tejada was not – he was definitely moving. I mean, again, if you're tracking miles ran, I'm sure he put in his workload for that first half, but he was having trouble finding himself space to get the ball on a more consistent basis in that first half. So I got – making that substitution, it did make sense. However, addressing or setting aside from the offense for a second, that goal that Louisville scored in the second half, we basically just built him like a highway to heaven of a wide open gap right through the middle of the defense. Everybody backed away from him and gave him a perfect one-on-one shot with McCarthy. You watch that play, and Diakite and Doherty, literally like the Louisville player cuts the ball outside of his right foot, cuts the ball to his right to try and split that gap. Diakite and Doherty are actually positioned very well on the play initially. They both look at each other and both back off. Afraid, of course, that like if both of them go in on the player, that you're going to end up causing a foul, causes a PK, and all hell breaks loose. They both look at each other and both of them legitimately back off. It's a second of hesitation, but you can see it on both of their faces.
Right.
You see the moment. And that's frustrating because we're getting towards the end of the season. There's 3 games left. Like Loudoun is one of the 3 games left on our schedule. You can't be making those kind of errors at this point in the season because you make a moment like that, like that's a 1-0 loss in the playoffs with a play like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the playoffs require you to play perfection, basically. If you want to make a deep run in the playoffs, you basically have to play perfect. That's a moment you lose a game 1-0 in a playoff round. And that's the thing that's crazy to me is that happened at all. That Diakite, and I put more blame on Diakite than I do on Doherty. Diakite had the angle over Doherty. Doherty would have been risking a yellow card, if not worse, by going in on that play because he started at a bad angle. But Diakite is the center defender. He's the boss. He's the man running the show in the defense. He needs to be the one to come in and make that play. And he needs to have the authority to come in and do that and to not second guess if another player is going to interfere with that. You've got to go in and do that. And you can't think twice about it. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. You don't want to see that, but we've seen Diakite make a couple of errors this year. I don't know if it's enough to be worried. It's not. I mean, that's kind of be a roster decision for next year anyways, as far as like if that's something that happened too often when you really dive into the specifics of the season. But that is something that needs to not happen in the playoffs.
Well, that's thinking about it, like you said, we've seen him make a couple mistakes. It doesn't happen often, but it seems like when he makes a mistake, it's a big deal. And I think that's part of because of how important he is defensively when he's on for us, that when he makes a mistake, and I don't know if it's just where he is in the field, if it's the way we're set up in the back with playing 3 in the back, one mistake.
It's formation. I blame that more on formation and tactics because when you're playing one center back, like true center back,
right?
If he makes an error, it's over. Like he has to play a perfect game, and that's the difference between having a 4-back set compared to a 3 or even a 5-back set is
You've got someone
If
there to
one
cover.
of those others make an error, you have backup. You have a reserve. There is somebody else there to cover the mistake, potentially. With a 3-back system, you are screwed if you mess up. That's one of the things. We've seen it before with this formation. That's one reason why I've always been hesitant about 3-backs. We saw it with Murad against New York Red Bulls. That's a classic example of a game where it only takes one of those 3 guys to just make a mistake and everything goes away.
Right, because then your only backup, your only cover is your goalkeeper, which McCarthy is a great goalkeeper,
Yep.
but at that point it's a 50-50 chance.
Yep. I mean, you see it again with was it the Birmingham game where it was kind of Murad, but it was also like Diakite bit on a play up in midfield and took himself completely out of the play. And then Murad was beat on the one-on-one run, which, I mean, that's speed and athleticism. That's one thing. Tactics is another. When Diakite removed himself from that play against Birmingham, that's what led to that goal. So, I mean, I think it has more to do with tactics and formation and the perfection required to play a 3-back effectively and correctly. So it is what it is. So one of the things that we're doing on the show, we're trying to get a little bit more listener involvement. So one of the things that we were legitimately asked, because it's the next part of this second half recap, of course, especially when we're reviewing highlights, the Malik Johnson penalty kick.
Well,
we were asked.
Real quick, before we get to that, because I got a couple things I want to throw in there. One's kind of joking, one's kind of serious. But the joking one might even be serious in the end. You've gone back and rewatched it. Now, outside of the McCarthy yellow card for time wasting in second half stoppage, was every other yellow card, because there was 4 others, including the double yellow on Doherty throughout the game, was every other one for a foul on Hoppino? It feels like we got carded every time there was a foul against a Rowdies player fouled Hoppino. That's what it seemed like.
It might be.
I know at least 2 of them were. I'm not sure about the Guenzati one in the second half. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure those 2 that came real quick, kind of back to back to Doherty and Murad. I think those were both for fouls on Hoppino.
It wouldn't surprise me. He was an electric player, and he's been an electric player for them since he joined. I mean, obviously, it doesn't show up in the stat sheet, obviously all the time, just hustling hard or whatnot. But yeah, he's been a great addition to that team, and so that makes sense that he's the one getting fouled that often.
Yeah. And so the semi-serious one, and you mentioned the substitutions, which all were second half subs. One coming in at the start, and I'm going to confess that I'm totally stealing this from the 3 Things article on the Rowdies website. Did you read that last part?
I haven't caught it yet. No.
All right. So the subs that come in, the first sub is Lucky coming in for Tejada, and as we know, Lucky scores the equalizing goal in right near the death of the game. The next sub is Jan Ekra coming in for Steinberger in the 69th nice minute. Ekra plays a big role in the build-up to that. Ekra crosses the build-up in getting the ball to Barry who crosses it to Lucky for the assist. Barry is the other sub in the 80th minute. Barry comes in for Leo, takes that right back spot, which moves Malik to the left side, which puts him in position to get the penalty that we're about to talk about. So it may have paid off in ways they didn't anticipate, but it definitely paid off those 3 subs.
Well, and that's one of the cool things about this too, is that we've seen Collins make that type of tactical switch before, where we see Malik play for a portion of the game on the left flank. That's been something we've been noticing. If he sees in something to take advantage of, because that's not necessarily saying that Malik is better matched on the left flank per se. Some of it's just the fact that he's versatile in general. Because having Barry come out on the right wing, it's just about that's where Barry's strength is. And Malik you're not sacrificing anything overall by having Malik play on the left. And I think that has more to say with that decision than anything else, where it wasn't necessarily a matchup that we thought we were going to win repeatedly in that half with Malik on the left side after that sub was made. So, I mean, Yeah, I think you're going to see some more of that. I think it's a worthy substitution to make and a tactical change to make because I like it. I mean, I think, and especially because even in the context of mentality, if you're an opposing team and you see Malik has been burning you all night on one side of the field, and you're used to not playing against that, for 60 minutes of the game, and all of a sudden now you're switching and now you're playing somebody that plays completely different to a certain point than Leo does. As a defender, that's something you've got to worry about because now you've got to step up for that.
I'm going to break in before we get to this portion with a couple score updates. 64th minute, Ottawa is still leading Indy 1-0, but Indy is down to 10 men. Also leading 1-0 right now, the Tampa Bay Rays over the Oakland A's.
I'm watching that on TV right now.
Nice. All right, so, and this was a. I need to go back and watch this. I've got the kind of the little play-by-play they do on the USO website.
Oh yeah.
The 59th minute, Matthew Watson, Indy 11, wins a free kick in the defensive half. 60th minute, Matthew Watson, Indy 11, is shown a direct red card for violent conduct. I want to see what happened.
Ooh, somebody lost their temper.
He might have lost the temper through whatever gave the free kick. And
That's
got sent
awesome.
off before who anyone could take it. All right, so where are we at here? Let me go back and set this up here. So we're down now to late in the game, 87th minute, 83rd when Doherty sent off, second yellow, foul on Hoppino.
Yep.
87th minute, Malik Johnson draws a penalty, cutting into the box. No one really seems to argue it. You can hear. Like, I feel bad because we know some of them. I feel good because it helped us in the end. But the groan you hear coming over the microphones from the Louisville fans is just like, oh, great.
Sweet music to my ears.
Seba buries the penalty. What's that, 17, 18 goals this year now? He might break 20 before we get to the playoffs. That would be insane.
Awesome.
Didn't seem controversial. But we did have a question about it. Go ahead and set it up.
So, Jake Nutting, our fantastic writer du jour for our unused substitutes. He, of course, if you don't know him, Jake does amazing pieces for us for the website and for the podcast. We love Jake. Thank you. He has converted his cousin in New York to being a Rowdies fan. We have been told that Matt listens to us pretty regularly. He put in a question to Jake.
Great name, by the way.
That we wanted to ask us to get our opinion on it. If this game is 2-1 instead of a 2-0 result, do you think that play is still a penalty if the game situation was different for a score? So because the question kind of comes into the idea that was it so soft of a penalty that being down 2 goals made that an easier call to make because it's less controversial to a certain degree?
At 2-0, the referee doesn't feel like he's deciding the game by giving the penalty. Is basically what it comes down to. I don't want to say it's a soft penalty because I think it's a clear-cut penalty. But it's one of those where I'm not surprised if it's not given. It's not someone going in studs up. It's not someone grabbing a shirt or pulling a guy down from behind. It's a meeting of the legs. But I think there was definitely contact. It did impede the progress of Malik on the ball in the box. It's a foul anywhere else on the field. It's a foul there too. Is the way it should be. But deep down inside, does the referee call that if it's 2-1?
I mean, then it's reverse controversy, right? Like if he doesn't make that call because it's a 2-0 game or because it's a close game 2-1, then he's still wrong. Right. Because you pointed out, and this is where my opinion is. It's a foul on the field.
But it's not about if it's right or wrong. Do you think he does it? Do you think he still gives that penalty at 2-1?
So, okay. So speaking as somebody that has been involved in refereeing for a long time. Now, granted, it's been a while, but grew up in a family of referees, actually. I would think, and again, something I addressed earlier, I hate referees that ref to the tone of the game.
Oh, I thought you were just saying you hate referees.
Ref the rule book. Don't ref the tone of the game. Ref the rule book. If it's a foul, call it a foul. If it's a yellow card, give it a yellow. If it's a red, make it a red.
Yeah.
Don't say, I'm going to let that one slide because the game hasn't been all that chippy today.
Yeah,
Excuse me?
If it's a red in the 73rd minute, it's a red in the 2nd minute.
To me, that's how I believe it. Now, granted, I'm kind of in the minority on that with a lot of referees, but that's a culture thing, right? I mean, the higher you go up, the more that plays a part in it. But
right.
So I would think, and here's my opinion on this. I think it was a foul. Malik cuts him back. Guy tries to stop that ball, fails to intercept the ball, ends up catching Malik in the process of Malik running the other direction. Mm-hmm. To me, it's a simple foul. It's absolutely not a yellow card. It's absolutely not a red card. It's no goal, no goal scoring denials or anything like that. No dog so's. I think it's just a simple foul. That's all it is. And here's the thing about penalty kicks. Technically speaking, that's all it should be. If it's a foul, it's a foul. It's a foul. Okay, we're going to blow the whistle. Nobody's getting a card. Nobody's getting ejected. It's just a foul and a PK. That's it. And then we'll move on. That's how I've always believed it. That's what I took when I watched that. Because here was the big telling thing to me. Nobody in that stadium argued the call.
No.
I saw not an ounce of protestation on that. To me,
frustration,
that's the telling sign.
But no protests, yeah. I saw some frustration from the players. But I think if you go into this at 2-1, if that happens, I think the players are protesting like crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. Because
if it's me and I'm in that situation and it's a foul, it's something like that against my team, I'm causing a stink. Regardless of whether I think it's a penalty or not, I'm doing whatever I can to try and get in the referee's head and make him second-guess himself, make him go to the linesman if something like VAR is available, which it's not in this situation, to force that. But I think if it's 2-1 when they give that penalty, I think the crowd is even more upset. I think you see some serious protests from the team. That being said, it's still a foul. He did the right thing. But I do think you have to give him credit for, in a game with some pretty heavy playoff implications, for doing the right thing, which sometimes referees don't. They always have that in their head about, should I let him play? Should I swallow the whistle? Let the players decide it. If this is Swope Park in Loudoun, no one cares, even if it's 2-1. But Rowdies Louisville, at this point of the season, there's a lot of weight on that ref's shoulders to do the right thing, and he did. I love to knock the referees. I'll probably do it before the show's over. But right there, he absolutely did the right thing. I don't know if he does it at 2-1 though. I really don't know if he does it.
Yeah.
I'd like to think he would, but I don't know if he does.
And I think that look, obviously there are going to be fans, rightfully so, being good fans of any home stadium. If it's a closer game, if there's going to be more protests, there will be. So I don't know if that's a telling sign as to whether the call was right or not. Because I think that's going to happen regardless. If it's a 1-1 game, if you're down 2-1 and somebody gives a PK late or whatever, I think that was it. To me, I mean, even as a Rowdies fan to a certain point, if I don't think a call is valid, I'm going to voice my opinion about it regardless. It doesn't matter if the score's 4-0 or 3-1. If it's a bad call, it's a bad call. I'm going to say so. But if it's a good call, I ain't going to say anything.
I'm the ultimate homer. I'm going to, 3 weeks later, begrudgingly admit that there's a chance that it might not have been the right call, even if it helped my team, or that it was the right call if it went against my team. I am proud to be part of the home field advantage.
Well, we'll wrap up this game by saying thank God for players like Barry, and thank God for players like Lucky, and thank God for players like Ekra, and all of this is just to say we got a draw on a garbage field late in the season in a game that we had no business getting a point out of, and we did it. And that's awesome. And this team is great.
And look, let's be 100% honest. I've seen Rowdies fans out there. I've seen them saying that they turned it off in the after the second goal for Louisville. I will confess, I didn't turn it off, but I kind of got up and took a little walk after the second goal. Actually, not after the second goal. After Doherty is sent off, I said I'm going to go get a drink, a different drink. And by the time I had made my way back to the television, it was not 2-0 anymore. But it was. I was laughing watching the some of the tweets come up. At like even 2 hours later, someone posted, "Wait, the Rowdies drew."
Yeah.
What?
It was funny because I was in Orlando this past weekend, so I didn't get a chance to watch the game live. I didn't see it till last night, actually. It was funny because at one moment when we scored the goal to make it 2-1, I was like, "Oh, it's 2-1." You say, like, getting all braggadocious about the fact that like I predicted a 2-1 to score, and it's like almost as soon as I sent the tweet out, it was goal 2-2, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm deleting that tweet because there's no point of leaving that one up.
Nice.
And that's when I threw out the I'm more than happy to be wrong.
Nice. So you've watched it more recently out of the two of us. This might be a tough one to do. Who's your man of the match?
Oh, you know me. I love taking the easy road out every now and then. I'm going to give it to Lucky. And I'm going to give it to Lucky because the header that he put and the run that he made were perfect. And I'm going to give it to him for that. Because he also did some crazy stuff during that second half, too. In terms of the type of pressure he was applying, he really disrupted them a lot. So I'll give it to Lucky for being a second half hero.
I'm going to go with the captain. If he doesn't score, if he doesn't convert that penalty, if he doesn't get the 2-1, Lucky's goal probably doesn't happen, and even if it does, it doesn't matter. And this is why he has the armband. And you know, if we go back to the beginning of the season, I remember we had at that preseason kickoff party out at the St. Pete Auditorium. It was kind of told to us that it was going to be, you know, the armband wasn't a set thing. It could rotate between games. There wasn't necessarily one captain. Just like there were questions about whether Seba could play this striker role himself. Well, it's been one captain. He's the captain, and he's shown why week after week. And to take this, you know, a penalty is a penalty, but a penalty when you're down 2-0 in a game with major playoff implications is a big deal. And Seba steps up and does it, and that's why he's the captain. And that, you know, to me, I think that contributes to the effort, the urgency, the morale, the comeback that leads to Lucky's goal a couple minutes later. So I'm going to give it to Seba.
Fair play.
All right, so wrapping up with that one, let's check in real quick. Still 1-0 Ottawa Fury in the 77th minute. Let's go on to the next part. Lot of and we've, you know, we were doing notable results and notable games at the beginning of the season, just focusing on the top 10, and at this point in the season, we've narrowed it down to the top 4. There's still a ton of games because there's games going on every night now. So just between last week and this week, we've had Red Bulls 2 and Charleston drew. Atlanta United beat Indy 2-1. Nashville beat Loudoun 2-0 to temporarily go top of the table for the first time in club history, only for Pittsburgh to jump back up with a 2-1 win over Loudoun and a 3-0 win over Indy. You know, I don't remember if we talked specifically about it, but there was so much being made about Indy having all these games in hand. After tonight, they're even, and they've thrown so many of these games away. They've lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
This is like I said, this is, I said it before Saturday night's game. This is when we're going to find out if this is the kind of team that sets the table or if this is a team that sits down and eats. And I don't know that we've completely answered it. The fight back to get a point out of there was impressive, was inspiring, and a draw is what I predicted. But if you're going to eat, you got to win. And Indy has not been eating in a while. They have definitely become a table setting team. Like you're going to see, we've talked about, and I'm going to ask you this in a few minutes. We've talked about the kind of 3-team race for the last 2 spots, the 9 and the 10 spot. Well, there's a 5-team race for the top 4. And,
it's a 5-team race,
and I mean it's wide open from 5th to 1st. I mean, when I got home today at about 6:00, I started updating the show notes. Indy was technically at that time, because their game with Ottawa had just kicked off, but it was still 0-0. Indy was technically in a 3-way tie with us and New York for 57 points on 31 games. And in that situation, we'd be sitting in 5th place because of the overall wins tiebreaker. Right now, the way the result is, and I keep looking to make sure I haven't jinxed it yet, they're sitting at 56 points, 1 behind us, and staring at their 4th straight loss. Possibly. If they've got about 11 minutes to turn this around and try and get something out of this game. So that's how quick some of this is changing. Like it matter. I think Ottawa scored in about 20 minutes in. There's a ton of games going on, and there's a ton of movement at all ends of the table at this point. You've only got 3 teams truly eliminated. I think you'll have 1 or 2 more by this weekend. Maybe even before then, because I still don't know the full schedule of games coming up this week. But I know there's tonight, and then I don't think anyone plays tomorrow or Friday, but there's definitely a ton of Saturday games. But Pittsburgh was the big winner this week, 2-1 against Loudoun, 3-1 against Indy. Brian Cook, who's an Indy-based guy, writes for Beautiful Game Network's written counterpart website, and also does his own podcast. Mentioned. Remember when we all thought Lilly was washed up and the game had passed him by? Yeah,
no,
not quite.
Yeah, not quite.
Other matchups, the ones we're keeping an eye on, of course, right now, Ottawa leading Indy still 1-0. Saturday, Indy hosts Memphis. They're going to be without Matthew Watson. Honestly, I don't know who that is, but they won't have him for that game. North Carolina FC hosts New York Red Bulls 2 in a game that's going to have an impact on us as well. And Pittsburgh faces Atlanta United 2. Now, the Rowdies' lucky charm of Andrew Carlton was suspended for Atlanta's last game, but luckily he's back for this one. So I'm pulling for a late Andrew Carlton winner, so Atlanta walks out of Pittsburgh with all 3 points. Hopefully, he's done it for us in a couple games so far. Look for him to keep doing it again. But your current top 10 traditional table, Pittsburgh's on top, then Nashville, Red Bulls, Rowdies are in 4th. Indy currently is in 5th, 1 point behind us. Louisville in 6th. They've clinched the playoffs. They clinched the spot with that draw, as disheartening as it was. But I don't think they've got any real chances of top 4. They're 6 points behind. They have a game in hand on everybody else, except for St. Louis and Birmingham and Charleston, who are chasing the last 3 spots. I don't think Louisville gets into the top 4. North Carolina currently in 7th with 50 points. Ottawa would be at 49 points right now. Or no, 48. So they're still 2 points by North Carolina. St. Louis, 42 points. Birmingham, 39 points. That's your top 10. Charleston is right behind, is level on 39 points, but has 2 fewer wins than Birmingham. Which, by the way, like, they're just, consider the way Birmingham's season started, and now they have 2 more wins than Charleston. Like, Charleston hasn't had the best year, but still, that seems crazy.
That's the difference between draws and wins, though. Charleston has 12 draws on the year. That's the most in the East.
Yeah.
And they're sitting currently out of a playoff position as a result.
And so, like we said, Pittsburgh's on top, Nashville, Red Bulls, and us. We're 1 point back of Nashville in second place. We're 4 points back of Pittsburgh in first place. these last 3 games are going to be intense. Especially and we've got 2 against Loudoun and Hartford, and then one where we're hosting Indy, who is in bad shape right now and is not great on the road. At least not as good as they have been at home. They're unbeaten at home. So thankfully we're not going there, although we did draw there earlier this year. Points per game wise, Pittsburgh's on top, just shy of 2 points a game at 1.97. Nashville is at 1.87. Us and the Red Bulls are tied at 1.84. Indy at 1.81 currently, again, if scores hold. Well, everybody's made all their substitutions now, too. We've got about 7 minutes plus stoppage left. Louisville, 1.7. North Carolina, 1.61. Ottawa, 1.48. St. Louis, 1.4. Birmingham, 1.3. Charleston, 1.3. Charlotte, Swope, and Hartford are eliminated. Memphis, Bethlehem, Atlanta 2, and Loudoun are the next most likely to be eliminated. And it'll come down, I think, to the end about Charleston and Birmingham and St. Louis. St. Louis currently has a 3-point. They've all played 30 games. St. Louis has a 3-point advantage right now, so it may be down to Birmingham and Charleston. We'll see what happens. But like I said, we've talked about the 3-team race for the last 2 spots. It's 5 teams for the top 4 right now. Steven, who you got?
Well, I mean, some of this has to depend on if Pittsburgh's ever going to lose a game for the rest of the year. I mean, they went, 9 games without allowing a single goal until they allowed one last night in Loudoun. I mean, that team is, at this point, they're not – okay, so here's something to clarify, too. Pittsburgh's not beating a lot of people by a lot of goals. Everything's like a 1-goal game. Most of those wins that they have are 1-0 victories. So, but this is the thing. They have a 4-point gap right now, even on games, with only 3 games left. That means they have to drop 2 games of their last 3 for us to even have a smoking chance of doing this and pulling off a first-place finish. Because, quite frankly, they haven't lost since, July? Because, I mean, the same thing's actually true of Louisville. Louisville hasn't lost in forever as well. It's just that Louisville's getting more draws than wins.
As a wise philosopher once said, one of yours and Dan's favorite philosophers, a guy by the name of Dominic Toretto. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning, and that's what Pittsburgh's doing. Quick, I want to go over the run in for these teams. Pittsburgh's last 3 games, they have. They host Atlanta on Saturday. Then they go to St. Louis next Saturday. And they finish off the regular season in Birmingham on Sunday the 20th. I need to go find the tweet. So the final weekend of the season, Pittsburgh must be one of them. The final weekend of the season, there's 2 games on Sunday. Everybody else plays on Saturday. At least 2 of the teams on Sunday are still in contention for different spots in the playoffs. They're going to know going into their games exactly what they need to do, while everybody else is going to play at the same time. I'll have to look up the schedule.
Yes, I remember that tweet. I saw it. That was a few weeks ago.
Someone from Nashville tweeted that part out. So Pittsburgh's got 1 home game, 2 road games. Nashville hosts Louisville on October 8th. So next Tuesday. Then they host North Carolina on October 12th. Then they host Atlanta October 19th. They've got the nice situation of finishing off with a 3-game homestand. Red Bulls, who have lost now 3 of their last 5, travel to North Carolina, travel to Birmingham, travel to Loudoun. Those last 2 games should be pretty beatable. It's teams that are out of the playoffs. Well, no, Birmingham's in right now. But New York has not been good on the road. I'm not going to be surprised to see them lose at least one of those. We know we go to Loudoun this weekend, host Indy on the 12th, All right, we go to Loudoun on Friday. Host Indy on next Saturday for the final regular season home game, and travel to Hartford on the 19th for the last regular season game. Indy, 87th minute, still down 1-0. Hosts Memphis, comes here, and then hosts Swope Park, a.k.a. future Sporting KC2. Or, and I'm gonna give this to I think this was from Michael Taylor. We're just gonna call them the Whiz Kids. And then we said Louisville City probably doesn't have a chance to top 4, so I'm not gonna worry about them.
I'm not worried about that.
Who of those 5 do you think has it the best? And I said, look, I'm not counting on a first place finish, but who are your top 4? Who gets in, regardless of what order?
Pittsburgh's in.
Yep.
They absolutely will finish top 4.
Okay. I'll go with that. I like that.
As much as I hate to say it because they were not one of my predictions earlier this year, I'm going to say I think Nashville will finish top 4.
I think the 3-game homestand to finish up is going to give them a boost. I think they'll get in there too.
And then I think it'll be New York and Tampa Bay, which is funny because that's 1 through 4 right now. But I think Indy's slide is only going to get worse and or prevent them from getting in to the top 4.
So even if they are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that light is actually a dumpster fire, is what you're saying?
Pretty much. Because especially if this score goes final tonight, there's no way Indy's, I think, well, I can't say no way, but I think when you look at those schedules, I think Indy's kind of looking out. I think they'll finish in 5th.
All right, you ready for mine?
Sure.
And I don't necessarily know if this is the order, but I think this is what it's most likely to be. Pittsburgh, Nashville, Tampa Bay, and despite losing tonight, I think Indy gets that 4th spot. I think New York, going on the road for 3 games, they drop 1, they might drop 2 of those. And it might come down to a goal difference tiebreaker at that point, but I think that's what happens. It's going to be extremely close.
I think no matter what, it'll be extremely close. I think that's fair to say. I think I have a bit more faith in New York that they will find a way to turn it around and to kind of at least get 3 points from those last 3 games. I think that's for certain. I think that they're going to at least finish with 3.
We are in stoppage time in Ottawa. The first minute of I don't know how many because they didn't post it in the play-by-play. But there's been a yellow, a red, a yellow, and then 6 substitutions. So I'm going to guess maybe around 3. But with Canadians, they usually end up getting I'm going to assume 5.
It's a metric 3.
Well, it's 3. This is like when I tip the pizza guy because I want to keep the pizza guy happy. I do like the 20%, but then I round up to the next dollar. I think that's what they do in Canada. They do, okay, here's the actual time. We're going to add a minute for the metric, and then we're going to round up 1 more minute. So I'm going to guess probably 5 minutes. Now,
fair enough.
Let me see if I can find this. Ooh, Ottawa almost had another goal. Everything's scrolling by now because I haven't looked at it in a while. Let's see. What have we got here in terms of...
By the way, for those listening at home, I'm literally watching him basically look at a computer screen. I have no idea what he's looking up. I have no idea what's going on in the show. None of this is actually on the notations.
If you were listening, I said I was looking for the stoppage time. I was looking for the stoppage. I told you that.
We are off the rails. This show is
always off the
going
rails.
Crazy tonight.
All right. Next up.
I'm just admiring all the dead air going, oh, well, maybe. I'm like, this makes for just absolutely hardcore listening radio right now.
Between me looking off into the distance and the keyboard going nuts on your end still, oh, man. Boy, was I off. I said 5 minutes. 8 minutes.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
I should have gone with that because Canadian stoppage time is like almost always 8 minutes.
It's metric scale. It's metric scale stoppage.
Man, that's insane. All right. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, our executive producer, and if you didn't listen last week, then shame on you. But one of the new additions to the Patreon perks we've made is that for the $10 a month beneficiaries, or benefactors, I guess, they will be named as executive producer on a rotating basis. And I forgot to do this. I meant to send a message to David too about because he didn't get a chance to turn in an idea, a question, or a topic. But executive producers get to submit a question or a topic for us to discuss on the show. The suspense was I got in touch with Mike yesterday, and he said he was going to do something, and left it until like minutes before we came on, so we wouldn't have too much time to do this in our heads. I think kind of do this off the cuff. So let me play the audio from Mike, and then we will discuss. All right, here we go.
Hello, Stephen, Matt. Greetings from an airport in Philadelphia. I have, I guess, as executive producer for the week, I am going to set up a question for you guys. So here's the question to chew on this week. We know that we've got a playoff spot, and we don't know yet if that playoff spot is going to be at home. When you look at the field, who's the team that you most would like to face, and who's the team that you least would like to face? Good luck with the show. I'll be listening.
All right, so there's all kind of angles we could have gone with this. Is it teams we'd most like to face in the first round, or teams we're like least like to face in the first round, or just any time during the playoffs? Does it matter if we're hosting home or away? So I followed up with Mike, and he said, just go with it. So what we decided to do, but I am going to throw a wrench in here at the end because I like to do that.
Of course.
I'm going to say who I would most like to face in the opening round, and you're going to do least like to face in the opening round. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, all right. That sounds good.
If the standings are as they are right now, we would be hosting Indy in the first round. At this point, that is who I want that is who I want coming here. I want Indy in the form they're in, with this kind of in the back of their minds. Their confidence is probably taking a hit. Their morale's probably taking a little bit of a hit. I want Indy coming here.
Interesting. All right. So on the flip side, teams that I would hate to face in the first round. So let's hypothesize a hair here. And let's say that either we finish in second maybe, or just because more than likely to make my scenario plausible, that's pretty much how it would need to end. Or we finish third and the team I'm looking at finishes in sixth. The team that I'm still most worried about, despite their recent form and the fact that it hasn't been spectacular, North Carolina has been the boogeyman for the Rowdies this season. They've absolutely torn us a new one in both games that we have played.
Oh, that's a good shout.
If we have to play anybody in the playoffs that I would hate to have to play against, North Carolina's the team that worries me the most, because we didn't just lose a couple of games to North Carolina. We got destroyed in a couple of games against North Carolina. So that's who I would end up. Like I said, regardless of recent form, that's still the team that I'm worried about. That's the team that I would tend to like to avoid in the playoffs.
All right, a counterpoint to that real quick.
Sure.
When you're going to go and win everything, when you're going to be the last team standing, when you're going to be the one grabbing the big trophy, you've got to. It always seems like whatever the sport is, you've got to beat these kind of boogeymen like you talked about. And I remember when the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, it was a year of getting rid of those curses in dramatic fashion. Like they had to, I think it was Chicago they beat in cold weather when they had never won when the temperature at kickoff was like below 40 something or whatever it was. Then for the NFC Championship, they had to go to Philadelphia, and Philly had knocked them out of the playoffs or kept them out of the playoffs. I think the last 2-3 years was always like the final stumbling block to before getting to the Super Bowl. And they do that in dramatic fashion. It's the last game at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, the crap hole that it was, beating them, and then they had to go to the West Coast where they were always terrible on the West Coast of the Super Bowl and flat out demolish the Oakland Raiders. By the way, I don't know. Do we have an update on the Rays playing in Oakland right now? Find out who that is.
It is currently 4-0. Rays are on top of the Athletics. In
Very
fact,
nice.
we've forced Athletics to make a pitching change already.
Very good.
Third inning.
Usually
Third inning, fourth inning, either way.
Look, if the Rays are going to mistreat one team in green and gold, let it be them and not us. So I'm on board with this. Like as much as I would love to avoid, like you said, whether it's been here or on the road, North Carolina's had our number, and the number has always been substantially smaller than North Carolina's number. But if we're going to win the championship, I want to beat them. Like that's a statement you make when you kind of put those narratives to bed. All right, I am going to throw out there because I've been thinking about this. Teams I would least like to I'm going to say teams I would least like to face at any point in the playoffs. Now you kind of went there with North Carolina because you said you just don't want to play them at all.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
But also first round I can see that. There's an easy one and there's a slightly less easy one, but still people will probably think it's taking the easy way out. If I had my preference, I wouldn't want to play Phoenix at any point in the playoffs. Because if it's not Phoenix, then I think it means we would be hosting that game. And that would be fun.
I mean, that's one way to look at it. I'll go with that. I like it. I approve.
By the way, full-time, Ottawa Fury 1.
Yes.
Indy
Thank you,
11-0.
Indy, for falling on your face.
So a couple weeks ago, I've mentioned Total Soccer Show on here a couple times. They do like a call for questions. And I sent this in. They didn't answer it. I kind of want to go back and point it out to them again now. Maybe they would talk about it. For the longest time, everyone talked about Indy as, yeah, but they've got like 7 games in hand. Whatever it was, 4 or 5, I think it was. At some point, I think you can have too many games in hand where you put it in your mind that this isn't a big deal. We have a couple games in hand. Or, all right, we drew a game. We probably should have won. That's okay. We have games in hand. You got to get results where you can and where you think you should get results because they're now the games in hand are gone. They're now even with us. And they're 1 point behind us. Like, I think at some point the games in hand can become an anchor, an albatross even. The other team I would not like to face, and I thought of this when you mentioned North Carolina being a boogeyman, I don't want to go to Pittsburgh.
Oh, well, yeah.
We've played better at least since the first time we went there, but every time I hear Pittsburgh away, I think of the Open Cup game.
Yeah, I was there. I was there for that. I remember this firsthand. Yeah.
So if I had to pick, there we go. So
That's
thank
fair.
you, Mike, for that.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
This
Appreciate
weekend,
we do.
This weekend we've got a trip to Loudoun on the agenda, which, when you look at their overall stats, it seems like okay, and this is one of the games I predicted we win. But Loudoun's gotten some results lately. So I don't think you can take this I say that is now I look in their lost 4 of their last 5.
was wondering where
But,
you were going with that.
2-1 to Pittsburgh. Nashville, they got shut out. They beat Swope Park, the Whiz Kids, 4-1. The Bethlehem Steel game wasn't good for them. Memphis was 2-1. They haven't necessarily won a lot recently, but they've gotten some surprise results. And they've held up pretty well in games against tougher opponents. It seems like it's the lower teams that they almost play down to. Then again, Hartford beat them 5-1 back in beginning of September. But they beat North Carolina 4-0 on August 31st. Pittsburgh's only beaten them by a combined total of 2 goals. They're bad, but they can surprise people in some cases.
Well, here's the thing to your point, right? It's on the road. They've only got 3 wins, 3 draws. They have 10 losses of their 16 that they've played on the road. At home, granted, they've had like 3 different homes this year, but they're 4-6-3 at home. So there is some legitimacy to the fact that playing at what is now Slugger Field, there is a point where that may or may not be the pushover game that some were hoping for a little bit ago.
If we come out of this 1-0, 2-1, I'm fine with it. Like, that's not a terrible result. First of all, we're already sitting still top of the conference on goal differential by 1 goal, admittedly, but still to have a higher goal differential than New York to me says something. But yeah, Loudoun is 7-17-6 overall, 4-7-3 at homes, we'll say, 1-4 in their last 5. They drew 0-0 at Al Lang on March 30th. That might be a game at the end of the season we might look at and go, boy, 2 more points in that game would have been handy.
We're saving that discussion for later because there's a bunch of games that I want to do that for.
Yeah, that's going to be one of our end of the season things. Their leading goal scorer is Kyle Murphy with 10. Gordon Wild has 8. They've got 3 players tied with 3. Wild and Murphy lead them on assists. They're tied with 2 other players with 3 assists overall. Murphy has the most shots by far at 55. Wild with 35. Orlando Sinclair, I don't like him. His name's Orlando, with 33. Antonio Bustamante's created 40 chances. Gordon Wild, 33. Connor Presley, 31. Clean sheets, Earl Edwards Jr., I don't like him. He used to play for Orlando, with 2. And Callie Brown with 1. They're conceding about 1.9 goals per game, about 2 goals a game. They're holding 49% possession, and they're averaging about 61.5 minutes per goal. They've scored 13 from outside the box. They like to use their artillery. 1 from direct free kicks. They have 1 player, Elvis Amo, on accumulation warning. 1 more yellow, and he's left the building for a game. Jordan Doherty will be suspended this weekend for his red card, and Damaduro remains on accumulation warning. What do you think?
Well, I think it'll be fun to see Hunter Gorski back on a pitch in USL.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that. Hunter Gorski's back there.
There you go.
Hi, Hunter.
Hunter was signed pretty late here, but he is playing for Loudoun. So that'll be kind of cool. It's pretty expected that he'll probably end up playing in that game. He certainly played last night against Pittsburgh. This is a team that we need to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, and not just at this point. Here's how I approach this game. This is not about getting points against a team that we think we should beat in terms of getting the points. Like, we need the points. Absolutely. This is a team that for confidence purposes, we should just beat.
Yeah.
Because even if we grind out a win 1-0 or whatever, again, you can look good winning just 1-0. I think that's going to be important. We need to be able to beat this team comfortably. Like, this is one of those games where we should try and really do our hardest to not allow a single shot on goal. Loudoun they're a bunch of children. They're literally as young as like Swope Park. Now, granted, I don't know if Hunter Gorski throws that metric a bit for a loop, but because he's a bit older, but well, I mean, comparatively. But
old man Hunter Gorski.
Say what?
It's old man Hunter Gorski out here.
Old 900 Gorski. But no, this is a team that we should not be worried about, whether at home or away. So we'll see how this goes. I mean, obviously Griffin Yao is a player up top that has made some waves despite his age.
Right.
But a lot of these guys in general, they're playing for the chance to earn an MLS contract in training during the preseason training next year. That's what they're angling themselves for. So all of these guys have things to look for. They've all got things to play for. So it's not a pushover situation. They're still professionals. They're still kids. But we need to win. We need to beat them just for confidence point. I don't want to worry about – because to me, losing this game – again, we've already clinched playoffs. It's not even worried about that. It's mentality and confidence going into playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't beat Loudoun, a team with children, a development team, that's going to screw with your mentality. We have to win for that purpose. That's what I would say.
If we don't win, even if we draw, people start talking about this as a trap game, that we overlook them, and we're too busy thinking about Indy, which I don't think is the case. I don't think Neil lets them get in that mind frame where that can happen.
I don't think so either.
But that's what the conversation around the league will be. And then they've got an extra day because they're playing on Friday before before Indy comes to town the next Saturday. It's just something else, another day to think about it and let it get in your head. And honestly, just go out there. Even though Loudoun may not be the 7-0 pushover they might appear to be, you win 2-1, don't feel bad about it. At this point of the year, 3 points is 3 points. A win boosts the goal difference by at least 1. We're a win behind the other team. And that's the other thing. We not just for confidence, but we're a win behind some of these other teams, and that's the first tiebreaker.
Yep.
And like we've seen, and like we've said, 3 games left, anything can still happen. So we've got the edge on the goal difference, but that's not going to matter if we don't have if we're not up there in the win. So we need to get that to at least get in contention with there. If we're going to get into second or third, or even make a push if somehow Pittsburgh falls apart, which I don't think will happen, for a first place spot. I mean, there's still a ton to play for. What's your prediction?
I'm going 2-0. And I'm going 2-0 without allowing a single shot on goal for the whole match.
I'm going 2-1. And that we play a little squeaky bum time for the last 20 minutes of regulation. I go 2-1. I think we get a 2-0 lead. We might even go into halftime 2-0. Something happens. Something weird. It might be a penalty. Hits us in late in the game there, and then we have to fight the urge to order more drinks by balancing out the knowledge we still have to drive home afterwards.
Hey, I'll say something else, something we pointed out in this that I actually forgot to bring up earlier. I wanted to make a point to Jordan Doherty's second yellow card, because he's out for this game, which we did successfully predict. We thought that Louisville game would have been a good game for Doherty to play in. That was something that you and I discussed on the show, that would make sense as bringing on that player. I thought Doherty's second yellow card was extremely harsh, because the play that it happened on was really not spectacular at all. There was nothing in it. There was plenty of people around the field. It wasn't like it was a tactical foul. That I think even that was one of the things that bugged me about that, is that the TV commentators said, "Oh, that's a tactical foul." There was no, it was not a throw-in. There's a million people around. It's not really a breakaway by any stretch. There's 6 bodies between you and the net. It's not a tactical foul. I thought a couple players just had their feet tied up a little bit, because it looked like our guy kind of turned earlier than the other, and he wasn't even looking at him when it happened.
It's because it was on Hopino. The referee was just determined that we were somehow out to demolish our former player, and anytime we touched him, it was a card.
Right.
Honestly, that's all I can think.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I thought that was a bad call. I thought in my sense, I thought that was overblown as far as a second yellow. It's certainly a foul, but I don't understand the yellow card decision there, especially considering that it ended up being his second. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
But either way, I'm okay with it to a point. Like if you're going to sit out a game as Doherty, this is the perfect game to sit out on.
I know.
Because
I kind of almost wish that Oduro had gotten his yellow last week and could sit out this one also.
Yeah. Which something else wanting to make sure or going to bring up, McCarthy getting a yellow card at the end of that game. What bugs me about that is that he's starting to get close now for a yellow card accumulation himself now, I think. I would bet.
Let me pull up the stats here real quick and look and see.
Yeah, it was something I hadn't had a chance to look up before because, and while you're looking it up, this is why I'll address why I'm thinking of this, is that you've got 3 games left. You're trying to get victories in all 3 of those. I'm pretty sure that makes at least 3 yellow cards for him on the year. At least. If you've got a couple of close games at the end of the year, you now can't get a yellow card without getting a real possibility of sitting out like the first round of the playoffs or even the second round of the playoffs.
All right, so stat page on the USL site says 2 yellows.
That's
But
it.
I have noticed that those sometimes take a few days to update after the game, so I'd want to go back and look and see.
Because I could have sworn mentally I thought that was his third.
I'm going to check one other spot here real quick. Hang
I
on.
mean, I could be stupid at just completely overblowing this in my mind right now. I'll take the L on that one if that's the case. I thought I could have sworn that was a third yellow card. And I remember him getting it, and I'm like, really? Like, in this game, in that situation, you're going to – really?
Oh,
I mean, it's not to say that Macklin Robinson couldn't fill in because I'm sure
Right.
he'd do fine. It's just one of those things where I was just thinking, like, that's a bad place to take a yellow late in the season when you've got playoffs around the corner and you could potentially sit out a game.
Yeah, I was going to go check the individual player pages on the USL site, but somehow clicking on every player's name just takes you right back to the front page. So these player pages at least seem to not be available. So 2 is the info that we have. If anyone's listening and knows differently, then they can let us know. But now those reset at the beginning of the playoffs, right? All the yellows reset?
I have no idea what the playoff rules are for yellow cards.
I'll have to double check and see because 3 games left. If he's only got 2, then he'd have to get a yellow in each game. And then I don't know if he gets it in if he did that and got a yellow in all 3 games and hit 5, would that be a suspension for the first game of the playoffs, or if it resets, does it not count? I don't know. We'll have to find out. But let's wrap it up for tonight so that we can get out of here and get this posted up for everybody who pulls the podcast down later. We love yous. I'm taking the easy road out this week to cousin Matt in New York and to executive producer Mike in a airport in Philadelphia. Hopefully homeward bound, because my experiences in Philadelphia is it's always better to be leaving than arriving. Thank you guys for adding to the show this evening. We appreciate it. Steven, who you got?
Well, since you took 2 people, you suck. My We Love Ya. Oh, jeez. I don't even have one this week. You took the one I even thought of. You suck. You suck.
So, how about this? We'll do.
I was fully expecting you to do either Matt or Mike.
Here,
and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll take the other one.
Here,
and we'll just call it a day.
I will cut Mike.
Took...
I'll cut Mike loose, and I'll go exclusively with Matt because of his question, and also for his parents who have a great taste in names. So now Mike is all yours.
My we love you to Mike because despite being in an airport in Philadelphia or somewhere thereabouts, he's still listening to the show like a faithful, loyal listener, and we appreciate it. We love it. We thank you for having opinions and reaching out to us on Twitter. It's always fun having some discussions on Twitter.
And also for having an extra $10 a month. We appreciate that too. All right. Other people we want to thank is Wolfface, the band. I think I got to double check and see. I remember they played Fest in Gainesville last year, and they might be on it this year. We need to start like promoting their concerts too. I haven't talked to those guys in a while, but they're still playing out there. To Radio St. Pete for letting us do this. For you. To Shamrock for giving us a bar area to hang out at and do a show from occasionally. I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure we're all meeting at a different place besides the Shamrock tomorrow. I don't want to put it out there just in case, but I think we're going to have a whole brain trust meeting, which is going to be kind of cool.
Yes, sir.
That was the thing I kept hinting to that I wanted to announce this week was, and if it's going to be all of us, I might need to bring some recording equipment.
Ooh. Special on location with the brains of the operation. I like it.
I was going to call it one night stand, but there's some connotations there we want to avoid, especially if
do we?
If some of us are seeking political office, I think maybe we have to, even if it's in Pasco. But we'll talk more about that later. Thank you to everybody who finds time to listen to us either live right now or later from the podcast. We love you all as well. Please continue to share, subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate that. Go to patreon.com/unusudsubspod if you'd like to support us on an ongoing basis. There are a variety of levels available, or you can even make your own. People have just said, hey, I'm going to give you $1 a month. I love it. That's fantastic. Every little bit helps to keep us going and to hopefully increase and expand and grow. Like, we're sea monkeys, but instead of water, just add money. And hopefully we aren't as big of a scam as sea monkeys, and then it all works out. Thank you also to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Steven, it's been fun. I believe I'll see you on Friday.
Yes, I will see you on Friday. I'll be at the Ralph's Mob.
Oh, that's right. You're going to the mob event tomorrow.
Yep.
And then the watch party on Friday. So we'll have all kinds of good info for next week, hopefully.
Exactly.
Right. It's been fun. We will maybe see some of you guys on Friday if you're in the same spot as us, somewhere in Pinellas County. If not, we'll talk to you next week, and then we'll see you next weekend at Al Lang for the Green Out.
Yes.
Oh, we do have
Green Out.
We do have over a week. Maybe I could get a green shirt done too. All right, we'll talk about this more later. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for listening. See ya.
Good night, and go Rowdies.
And go Rays.
The Rowdies were here, the Rowdies were there, they kicked the wall.